Well, hello everyone and welcome. We are happy to be here with you today on this Friday the 13th. My name is Robbie McHugh. I am one of the co-founders of the EMS Leadership Academy, and I'm here with Lisa.
Hi, everybody. It's great to see everyone.
So Lisa and I are here today for a special session on Friday the 13th because, you know, it's that kind of EMS superstition. As I hear sirens in the background, actually, that go by my house. Nobody likes to work on Friday the 13th. And there's a whole bunch of leadership superstitions. That's a mouthful. And if you can hear us and the audio sounds good, just type in the comments, sounds good or yes. If you could type in what city, state, or country, what area of the world you're joining in from. We have folks from all over that just attended our EMS Leadership Summit, our second annual EMS Leadership Summit last month. And that was over a year in the making. We finally recovered, we think.
I know it was an extraordinary experience. We had such a overwhelming response. We've said it so many times, but over 3,300 people from 26 different countries. We had 33 speakers, I think actually more than 33 speakers from 8 different countries. And it was just an overwhelming response, and the feedback has been incredible. And so we're very excited, and we're still very motivated from that. We're riding the wave of that extraordinary experience.
And it looks like we have folks joining in from Washington, from Minnesota, Boston, Massachusetts. Scott Moore, one of our speakers. Excellent to see you, Scott. Louisville, Kentucky. We've got Texas and we've got Georgia. So really great to see. Oh, we've got Ohio. Really great. I know I've got text messages. We've got Wendy Lund. She's watching live, one of our amazing speakers that's joined in almost every one of our summits. So we are happy to be here to support you. And we're happy to answer some questions too about your leadership superstitions. But Lisa and I have been working pretty much nonstop the last couple of weeks on this special project, which is why we are going to, I guess, kick this off.
Yes, we have a big reveal coming, and first we're going to talk about some leadership superstitions. That is hard to say, Robbie. Looks probably everybody is familiar with us, but we should say something about who we are.
Sure.
We are the co-founders of the EMS Leadership Academy and the co-hosts of the EMS Leadership Summit, and we created EMS Leadership Academy out of our commitment to making a really big difference in the world of EMS leadership. As many of you know, there's not a lot of resources available for EMS leadership development. And so, I don't know, 8 years ago, 7 years ago, seems like yesterday and forever all at the same time, we came together. I'm primarily a coach for peak performance, and I do consulting and speaking, and I've written a few books, one of which I co-wrote with Robbie. And Robbie is an extraordinary paramedic and now in a leadership role in the organization he works for. And so we brought our expertise together and developed the EMS Leadership Academy, which is an ever-evolving program, really. I mean, it's more than a program. It's really a philosophy of how to grow organizations that thrive and are sustainable. So anything else you want to add?
No. My background is as a paramedic, but also in leading either in the nonprofit space as well, and looking for really a deep dive into leadership. And I did my master's degree into leadership and healthcare, and really looking to bring our combined experiences to this group. Again, most places in most states are set up to where they say, well, here's an EMT curriculum. Good luck running an organization. And some people wonder why there may be such dysfunction within an organization, or it may feel you may have the chaos of the field mirrored into the operational side of your organization. So, but again, Oh,
I have
well.
to give a quick shout out to Frankie Rodriguez. Hi, Frankie.
We've got folks from joining us from all over the country, so it's really great. Oklahoma City, Pennsylvania, Portland. So today is Friday the 13th. We are here to debunk some leadership superstitions. And Lisa, if you want to take us through the first one, and we also have somebody from Kenya joining in. That's great, Evans.
Hello. Welcome, welcome. So we're gonna, there are many leadership superstitions, but we're gonna go through a few of them. But first, let's just take a look at what do we mean by superstitions. So this is from the Merriam-Webster dictionary online, because a lot of times people think about, superstitions around a black cat, or if you break a mirror, it's 7 years bad luck, and if it's what's another one? If you spill salt, you have to throw it over your shoulder to avoid bad luck. Like, there's all kinds of superstitions that we have. But really, when you know something is a superstition, it rarely has any effect on you. If you identify it as a superstition, like knock on wood, right? Like, people do that automatically. But for the most part, we know that's just a superstition, and it's probably, not going to make any difference if I knock on wood or not. But what you and I are going to talk about today are really superstitions that people don't know that are superstitions. I underlined one part here: a false conception of causation. And number two, a notion maintained despite evidence to the contrary. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in a few minutes. But my other definition of superstition is from Stevie Wonder's famous song, best-selling #1 song, Superstition. And one of the lines from the song is, when you believe in things that you don't understand, then you suffer. Superstition ain't the way. So now that everybody has an earworm who knows that song from Stevie Wonder. So these are the three that we're going to talk about today and debunk. Now, some of you are looking at these and thinking, well, that's not a superstition. That's true. People resist change. It's not me. I'm doing everything right. It's them. And of course, if I want things done right, I have to do it myself. As a matter of fact, I mentioned the first one to someone today, and they went, superstition? That's true. So that's the point, that when a superstition is something that we believe is true, and we don't look at it as a superstition, but in fact, it's not true. It's a perspective. It's a way of seeing things that limits your ability to make a difference and limits your ability to produce the results you want to produce. And, Robbie and I, when we work with organizations or individuals, we have our eye on two things primarily. And certainly, Robbie, jump in if I'm misspeaking here. But the two things we're looking at are, this is very generalized, but is what's the experience you're having and what are the results you're producing? So we are not simply coming from having people feel good and to hell with results. It's a two-pronged approach. We want people to have a great experience, and we want you to be able to produce results. And performance really is focused on result producing. And so that's kind of where we're focusing today, because these three superstitions that we've chosen to talk about really do negatively affect performance when you believe them to be truth versus seeing them as a perspective or superstition.
Getting comments that #1 is my life's philosophy, somebody says. And I will tell you, as somebody who truly believed this before, I started to get clear on, if I can take 100% of the responsibility for the outcome and not just blame someone else, that because it didn't get done right when I asked them to do something, it's going to happen in the future all the time. I started to see, how can I be more clear as a leader? And we say leader, really leadership is way beyond position in an organization. You can lead from any level. Lisa and I truly believe that. So when you start to debunk this first superstition here and see that you have a cause in the outcome of how it could be, it gives you more power in situations in dealing with those difficult challenges in your organization.
Well, and I would also add to that is that these three superstitions, we'll call them, or beliefs, also come from a very outdated model of leadership.
Hmm.
So in the past, in the hierarchical, sort of militaristic, top-down approach to leadership, uh, these all make sense. And, for example, the first one, if I want things done right, I have to do it myself. That is not coming from the perspective of my job as a leader is to develop the people around me, right? It's coming from a different, like I said, an old traditional sort of way of doing things, which really was never that effective, but for sure isn't effective now. So the what we're going to introduce to you that's going to debunk these superstitions is a different understanding of how to be effective as a leader that is based in neuroscience, for one thing, but also if you test what we're saying. So we're not going to ask you to just trust us and just do it because we say, but we're going to introduce this new way of looking at it and ask you to test it for yourself and see if your experience moving forward actually coincides with what we're saying.
And I'd like people to comment if they're watching this in right now. 1, 2, or 3. Which one? Which one do you believe in? Which is it? All three? Just type it in the comments. 1, 2, or 3. We'd love to see some interaction here and hear what people think.
Yeah, we didn't pull these out of the air. These are these are things that we hear all the time. And one thing I would like to say is, and this may be saying this a little early, but prior to the summit, we sent out when people registered, we sent out a request to people and said, hey, reply to this email and tell us what your biggest challenges are. And we got over 10 pages of questions and complaints and concerns and challenges. And it was amazing. And it was really eye-opening. And these three were some of the top things that we heard from people. So again, we didn't just pull this out of the air. This is from our experience of more than 7 years of working together with organizations and leaders about what they're facing. So do you want to go on to the next slide? So we assert that there are two factors at play that sort of bolster those three myths that we're addressing today. And this is an innocent misunderstanding. This is no one's fault. This is, we were conditioned a particular way from birth, really, about a misunderstanding about how the brain actually works. So before I talk about what the misunderstanding is, I want you to think of this as, however long ago, people believed that the world was flat. And that wasn't a misunderstanding for those people who were living that way. Or another misunderstanding was that illnesses were caused by evil spirits, right? That was not a misunderstanding for the people who were living that way. It only was later that we see, oh, that was a misunderstanding because now we know germs actually cause illnesses and the world isn't flat, the world is round. So those were innocent misunderstandings. People were conditioned. Well, we were all conditioned or it wasn't a nefarious thing, right? It was just a misunderstanding about how the brain works. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see this is a picture of a camera. So how we all basically came to understand how our brain works is it's like a camera, right? We're taking a picture of reality, or we're seeing reality and it's just the way it is. But in fact, that's not true. Our brain acts more like a projector than a camera. Actually, it doesn't act like a camera at all. It acts like a projector. So our past experiences, our opinions, our judgments, whatever we inherited, ways of thinking, anything that we've put into our databanks, and we project that out onto whatever is going on. So it's like the world is a screen and we are projecting, our brain is projecting our past onto current reality and also projecting onto the future. Now, this is no little deal. Like, this could be a life-changing moment if you slow down and actually think about this. If our brain, our eyes, our lens, if you will, is not seeing quote unquote an objective reality, we are actually at any given moment projecting our past onto what's happening, and we are understanding it based on our past. It will start to have us question, like, what's actually happening in reality. If it's being skewed, you could say, if it's being distorted, is I think a really good way of thinking about it. If we're wearing goggles that are distorting how we see the world, how we see what's happening, that gets us interested in what's actually happening. So this is not Robbie's and my good idea. This is based in neuroscience. This is the way that our brain works. But if you also slow down, like I said, and kind of notice, like, oh, I think so-and-so is lazy, right? Or I think so-and-so is stubborn. Is that coming from your current experience? Or is it because you've had a judgment either about that person or people who act that way, and now you're projecting your opinion onto what's happening? So our brain is not allowing us, unless we get conscious of it, unless we slow down and we question the perspective, or we question our judgments, we question our opinions, and start to go, is that happening now, or is that based on what's happened in the past? And frankly, the answer is it's based on what's happened in the past. So Robbie, what do you want to add here?
Well, we've got some great comments in here. People mentioning Simon Sinek, and they can see that these perceptions. Terry is bringing some of the science in, definitely with this hypothesis about what we're saying. And he also says there, it's easier to believe a convenient lie sometimes than it is to accept an inconvenient truth. So we're not saying that these are necessarily easy to take on, but it can, in those areas where things may not be working as well as you want them to work, it can be revealing.
Yeah, and this is, again, can be not only life-changing as a leader or in your job, but it can be life-changing in every area of your life. Because when you start to slow down and question the things you believe to be true, doesn't mean you throw it out, right? I'm not saying, and again, I think what you just said is critical. That is that try this in the areas that aren't working, right? So in the areas that are working and you have the results you want, hey, keep doing that. We don't mess with things that are working. This is in the areas where you're feeling dissatisfied, you're feeling stuck, you feel like you're in a rut, you feel like no matter how hard you try, nothing changes. Consider the possibility it's because despite your best efforts, you're believing something that isn't true. It was situational, or may have been accurate in the past, but it's not necessarily true in the circumstances that you're dealing with. And so if you go to the next slide, we use this, looks like a silly example, but
it's a matter of perspective here, right? You've got two opposing points of view. One person sees it as a 9, the other person sees it as a 6. We do this when we do our in-person training, or used to do that in-person training a lot, and get people to really see that it is a matter of perspective.
Yeah, and the thing you want to notice is both of those people are correct.
Right.
And one way they're both right? Because from the one person's perspective, it is a 9, and the other person's perspective, it is a 6. But if you go way back and go, no, it's just a line on the floor, right? That we've all agreed is a 6 or a 9. But from the sort of reality that they're looking from, it's true. And so when we see something different than another person, or we are so, we're so convinced, and I'm going to go back to those 3 superstitions, so convinced, you know what, you can't find good help, or if you want to do it, if you want it done right, you have to do it yourself, or the one about it's not me, it's them, right? If you just allow this to sort of make you wonder, uh, if you just slow down enough to go, huh, could it be? Is it possible that I'm projecting something that I believe from my past onto the situation, and it's not the truth? It's one possible point of view that explains something. It may be useful, it may be valid, but it doesn't mean that it's the only way. And just that little tiny opening it is an incredibly big opportunity, because then you can start to get curious, and you can get curious about, well, where did that come from, and how is it really? If I take my goggles off, the past goggles that I'm distorting reality, and I just take those off for a second and wonder, like, what's the other person's point of view, and where did they get that perspective from, and how is it true for them, right? um, there's it, some people think this is tough to do, and maybe it is, but when you notice that the results you want, the results you're committed to, are important to you, then maybe letting go of the story you have, or letting go of the perception you have, becomes less important. If the result becomes more important than your way or your opinion, but what you're committed to is more important, then it's easier, I think, to give up your opinion and your point of view, because
And
again, you're more committed to the result than the pathway.
yeah, I think we're getting some interesting comments, and Terry also says, like, letting go of what we believe in is the only way is tough, right? We think it should be, right? There's that word "should" that gives me a little twitch every time I hear it. The way we think it should be is projecting our past opinions on the way we think the outcome is the right way, right? And letting go of those shoulds in situations, and looking at the outcomes, and letting people really create their own path to the kind of shared outcome, I think is hard, but it also empowers other people, so you're not micromanaging folks.
Yeah, and again, we're looking from the point. Someone said this is a silly example, and that may be true, but it is one we can all identify with. And I think that when we start to just have just a question. We're not saying that this is true, and well, let me say it this way. We're not talking about emergency situations where you have to take charge and somebody has to make a decision. We're not talking about that. Those aren't really the areas where a lot of people come to us with problems. We're talking about the other
98% of the time, the non-life or death situations that we face every day.
where you're struggling with interpersonal relationships, and there's gossip, and there's negativity, and there's people believing the worst of other people, and all those kinds of things, or even just trying to get a team to work cohesively. I mean, we don't even have to go negative here. If you're just trying to get a team to work cohesively, if you're just out to develop people, and you're bumping up against, it feels like a brick wall, that's a great time to question, like you said at the beginning, like, what's my role in this? What am I not seeing? So we can go to the next slide, because I think that the second factor is something people can really identify with as well. We have something in our brains called the reticular activator. And what it does basically is and this is a very rudimentary explanation, but basically the reticular activators are what basically our brain looks for what we tell it to. So if I just buy a new red car, right, and I suddenly go out driving around or go into the parking lot, and suddenly it looks like everybody has a red car, right? How did that happen? Well, it's only because that's what I'm looking for now, is a red car. When I go in the parking lot, I see all the red cars. They were always there. It's just maybe I wasn't looking for them. So these two factors work together. They're the misunderstanding of how the brain works. If we're thinking that our brain is a camera versus a projector, then we look out and we are looking for more evidence. Again, unconsciously, innocently, we're looking for more evidence to prove our perspectives right. And that's where the reticular activators come in. And so we're going to show you an example. So if you go to the next slide. So do you see the vase in this picture, right? Like there's a vase right at the center. Or you can go to the next slide. Do you see the faces? So if initially when you look at we direct you to see the vase, that's what you see. If we ask you, do you see the faces? Then that becomes what comes out in the foreground. Now probably you can see both. As it's sitting there, you can see both the vase and the faces. But this is again a simple example of how our mind our brain, I should say, looks for what we tell it to. And so I'll go back to what I was talking about earlier. If you have an opinion about a person, let's say you think they're lazy, and you've come to that conclusion, either, 99% of the time, it's very quick. We make decisions very fast, often on an unconscious level, not even consciously. Once you've labeled somebody or something, then that's what your brain will see. Now, the other thing it does is it filters out what doesn't coincide with your label. And it will recontextualize things that don't match your label. So we really have to understand that anything that we're putting out, any kind of label or classification, anything like that you want to call it, stereotype, any of those things, if we don't recognize that we as a human being, our brain is projecting onto the screen, you could say, or onto whatever's happening, if we don't recognize that, we are automatically going to believe and miss that our brain is filtering out contradictory information. And that is just like wearing 100-pound weights around your legs as you're trying to run a marathon, right? So if you can, even for a second, even for a few minutes, wonder about this, it will free you up to see something new. And then it just reduces those weights around your legs. It frees you up from them. You don't have to be slowed down or
burdened.
Burdened, thank you, by these past beliefs that aren't working. And if you want to produce results, which every one of us does, right? Every one of us is committed to something that we want to see. If there's a way to unburden yourself from these superstitions and actually discover new ways of operating, new actions to take, fresh ideas, why not go for it?
If you're just joining in, again, Lisa and Robbie here with the EMS Leadership Academy, we are talking about debunking some of these common misconceptions in leadership. And just consider these are like adding a tool to your toolbox, right? Lisa and I have hosted several virtual conferences, and we've brought in experts from all around the globe, each sharing their past experiences, giving you that extra tip or that extra tool in your toolbox on how to deal with difficult situations as an EMS leader. We know what you're going through. Like we said earlier, just last month, we filtered through 10 pages of what your biggest struggles are in dealing with complex organizations. And that's what you're a part of, right? There are very few simple organizations. It's usually complex organizations and complex situations you're facing. And we are just 2 slides away from our big reveal, our big announcement that we truly believe will be like organizing all those tools that you've learned, hopefully, and taken away. And again, we're just sharing a few tools that you can try, right? We're not saying that you have to use them or that they're the truth, but we've just seen people create amazing results in their own leadership, in their leadership of others, and in their organization.
Well, what I will say is this is a paradigm shift, you know, and when there's a shift in paradigm, when there's a shift in understanding, it takes a while for us to be able to sort of internalize it, right? So for many years, it was believed that evil spirits, I mean, more than many years, hundreds of years, evil spirits caused illnesses, and people had very extensive practices for warding off evil spirits. And it was more than just a belief. It was a religion. It was, you know, it was a way of living life so that you're to protect your family or to protect your loved ones. And so when germs were first discovered, the person who discovered them and started talking about them was killed in the street because of it, because it was so contrary to what people believed, and it questioned, you know, what people lived, right, and was so important to them. And you know, hopefully we're not going to get killed in the street, you and I, but you know, this paradigm that we're introducing, that we're sharing about, is relatively new. It's about, you know, the neuroscience field has been growing and growing, but it certainly is a paradigm that is just starting to get more well known. That, you know, used to be you couldn't even talk about opinions, as there could be more than one, you know, and when you start to see that your judgments are valid, your opinions are valid, we're not saying that they're invalid. What we're saying is it's one possible way of projecting and understanding what's happening in the world, in your organization. And if you are willing to wonder about it, question it, notice that, you know, what's the result that's consistent with your perception? Is that the result you want? And if the answer is no, then you can start to maybe look newly at the situation and say, hey, you know, how can I see this differently? What's another interpretation I could have, or you know, get curious about what other people think and how they're seeing it. So that's, I guess, how I would kind of encapsulate this, or explain this as a paradigm, a different way of seeing the world, and understanding how your seeing of the world has something to do with the results that you're producing.
If you're listening to this and you're getting something out of this conversation about this new paradigm or this new way of thinking, or just some of the tools that we're offering, feel free to comment below, and we'd be happy to share your comments. We have one more slide that is one of my favorite stories, when Lisa shares about this change in a belief and how much of a dramatic impact it can have on your own development. So that's the next slide. And then we get into our big reveal. So we'd love to hear from you. Mariana says, we do the same in EMS. I think she's talking about kind of killing off those people in the street when it comes to our saying something that's in the face of other people's firmly held beliefs, right? How do we bring about change? We shared the cartoon that the leader saying that who wants change, and everybody raises their hand, but then they said who wants to change, and nobody raises their hand, and they all look down.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because a lot of times we share about, you know, when EMS first started, it was about getting the patient to the hospital as quickly as possible. And you look at how the ambulance, the, you know, original ambulances were designed, was completely for that goal, right? But then, you know, there's been a real change in now it's the vision is get the emergency treatment to the patient as quickly as possible. And then now the ambulance is designed with that in mind. That's an example of a paradigm shift, right? Treat the patient as quickly as possible is very different than get the patient to the hospital as quick as possible. And so, you know, you can see the impact of that. But it wasn't that people weren't that happy about it when it first, there was a lot of resistance to having, paramedics and EMTs being trained to deliver medical care on scene, right? That wasn't like, oh, what a good idea. Let's everybody jump on board. It wasn't like that. There was a lot of resistance to it. And now it's commonplace, right? We know that, it's a combination of those two things. So, anyway, so if you want to go to the next slide. So this is my the baseball throwing example. So bear with me for a second or a minute or two. So I'd like everybody who's on this call, or this live, I should say, to just imagine for a few minutes. This is not true what I'm about to say, but I just want you to imagine a way to put yourself in this situation for just a moment. Pretend with me that you and I and everyone on this call, on this session, is going to be in a baseball throwing contest 30 days from today. Okay? Every one of us is going to be in a baseball throwing contest. And our livelihood is going to be determined by how well we do in this baseball throwing contest. And what I mean by that is whether or not we can pay our rent or mortgage, whether or not we can pay our bills, whether or not we can have food for ourselves and family is going to be determined by how well we rank in this baseball throwing contest. Like I said, this is not true. This is just a metaphor. So imagine that now that we know we're going to be in this baseball throwing contest, we're not going to be working for the next 30 days. We're only going to be training for this baseball throwing contest. And we're all going to be assigned a coach that's going to work with us to help us to rank high in this contest. So when the coach asks you the question, which arm do you want to train with? What would you likely say? Now, if you're like most people, you're going to say whatever your dominant arm is, whatever your strong arm. Whatever, maybe it's the arm the right with, but each one of us has a dominant arm, correct? Now, when I ask people the same question, you want to get better as a leader, what do you want to work on? For most people, what they say is they want to work on their weaknesses. They don't say, oh, I'm going to work on my strengths. I'm going to work on my dominant strengths, and I'm going to, focus on that. For the most part, what people say is they're going to work on their weaknesses. Yet when we use the baseball throwing example, it becomes very obvious that what's going to have you be successful is in the baseball throwing contest is going to be using your strength. But we don't think that way when it comes to being more successful, being more effective. We think, oh, we have to focus on our weaknesses. And again, that is a paradigm that we all inherited, that if we work enough on our weaknesses, they're going to get better. Except what we know is that you have a much better and faster improvement when you work on things that are your strengths. Even if it's a strength that you haven't worked on before, if it's a strength that you have, the more you work with it, the quicker the learning will be. So am I saying you ignore your weaknesses? No, I'm not saying that. But what we wanted to do here was to give you an example of how, by shifting your focus onto what works or what your strengths are, you'll have a better chance of achieving the results you want. But if you in that baseball throwing contest spent the 30 days working on your non-dominant arm, the likelihood of success would be very small. I mean, obviously you'll have some improvement, but the amount of work it would take is just paled by comparison if you work on your strong arm and you know what to do to improve that. You know what exercises to do, you have a coach that shows you how to throw correctly. I mean, you're going to do much better than if you spent that same amount of time, even with a coach, working on what doesn't work or you're non-dominant. Hopefully that makes sense to people. And if you have questions about that, I'm certainly, feel free to put them in the chat. Robbie, what do you want to add to that? example?
I don't think I have anything really to add. It when you think about it at first, it seems like, well, yeah, why wouldn't I use my dominant hand if I'm going to be, if all of this is on the line? Why am I so focused on my weaknesses? Why would I be so focused on my weaknesses? But it's the default way of being, and how we tend to operate. And when I love when people see this example in our sessions, they tend to start thinking about, oh my gosh, my whole life I've been spending focused on what's not working and my weaknesses. And when I realize that I can look at team members from their strengths, then we can leverage their strengths. Why would I want to give somebody something they hate doing? Why wouldn't I want to put somebody on a project that loves doing that? Whether they've got a strength as they love to execute on tasks, or they love to kind of win others over, have conversations with other people. It is kind of crazy when we think about why we would possibly focus so much on our weaknesses.
Well, and one last thing I'll say before we jump into our big reveal is that you could consider the focusing on weaknesses as a lens, right? Again, we can, and if we again just get curious about what are the strengths of the people on my team, what are my own strengths? For the most part, we don't know. It's not something that we focus on. And strengths and weaknesses really are on a spectrum of novice to mastery. It's not I'm terrible at this, and I'm good at that. It's really more of a novice to mastery phenomenon. But when you start to get curious about what are the things you're doing that light you up, what are the things you're doing that you get excited about, what are you eager to do, and then think of those as your strengths. And when you think about, well, what are the things I procrastinate on, what are the things that I hate doing, those are more likely your weaknesses. And again, it's not that they can't change and you can't learn, but your biggest bang for the buck is focusing on what brings out the best in you already, and learning more about that, and really becoming more curious about how to grow those. So,
and we're reading great comments here. Terry, I think you're spot on talking about being a generalist versus being kind of a specialist as well. And it really makes sense when applying for positions and when we highlight our strengths. So it's great to see the comments and folks. So Lisa, I think we're ready for the big special announcement we've all been waiting for. We should have had a drum roll.
I know, we should have had a drum roll.
So we would like to announce that we've created, again, based on over 10 pages of your feedback and what your biggest challenges are, in 2 years of putting together, over 2.5 years, putting together virtual conferences with some of the leading experts in leadership, communication, organizational behavior, our combined close to 40, 50 probably years combined of organizational experience and working with organizations. We've created and are creating the Thrive Leadership Development Community.
Hooray! Da, 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 da. I feel like there should be confetti and fireworks going off.
So we are thrilled about inviting folks to join this leadership development community. And what we're going to dive into is the framework, again, of how we've tried to take the overwhelm that can be involved in leadership in an organization and bring it into an easy to follow framework.
Yeah. So we wanted to share a little bit about why we created this. Why a leadership development community versus programs and all those kinds of things. So we're just going to go over some of this. For one thing, the amount of pre and post summit feedback that we got, clearly with more than 3,300 people registering for our latest summit, there's really a demand and a need. People want support for developing themselves as leaders. And then again, we got those 10 pages, more than 10 pages of questions on various topics. But also after our 2019 summit, and again, during the 2020 summit and since, we've heard from a lot of people that they got great ideas, that they saw things that they wanted to do, but they felt overwhelmed. I mean, many of us have gone to conferences in the past and we've learned new things, and then all of a sudden it's like drinking from a fire hose, right? It's like, oh, I
Mhm.
don't know what to do first, and I don't have the support, or I have all this inspiration when I'm listening to this speaker speak, but then I go back into my organization and everybody's like problem focused, or walking around miserable, or they're not excited, or everything's our favorite. Well, the problem with that idea is, or we've always done it this way, and all the kinds of things that people hear when they try. They feel alone. Who do they turn to? Many people in EMS, and this may speak to you if you're watching, is you get this sacrifice syndrome. Like you feel like you have to do it all yourself. You have to know everything. You feel alone, and your life is getting sacrificed. You're not taking as good a care of yourself. You're constantly dealing with the fires, or the emergencies, or the not just in the I don't mean in the actual fires and emergencies, but I mean, it's like you're afraid things are going to fall through the cracks. You might feel ineffective with your time because you can't focus on what you really want to. My favorite is feeling like you're herding cats all the time because you can't get everybody on the same page, and maybe you're not sure where to begin. So, with all that in mind, we created Thrive, first of all, with easy access, right? The programs and things that the information, the content is easily accessible and highly affordable. Not everybody can bring us in. And right now, we're not doing any live training, but even to have us do remote training, it can be costly for some organizations. So this will be something that's on demand and very affordable. We draw from the strength of experts, not just us, but many of the experts that we have in our community will be delivering content. And then you don't have to reinvent the wheel. And not to mention the fact we're intentionally calling this a community because we'll be learning from each other, right? We're going to have a community of EMS leaders, whether they're in a role of leadership or not, who can answer each other's questions, give each other feedback on different options and opportunities. We really want this to be a community developing each other and ourselves.
Wow, I'm really looking at the comments here too, and from Evans from Kenya talking about how he's been using the leadership, our EMS leadership programs to really help him shape things out with developing their first response and EMS system in Kenya, and he wants to say thank you so much. And Terry talking about how it's kind of like our response bag. I guess everyone is curious to know what you bring, and we talk a lot about what's in our kit, and the same goes here for the kind of the best leaders we've learned from and the courses we've taken. So.
Yeah, and we're going to help people to go to question their limiting beliefs, like what are your blind spots, and instead of always having to deal with the next crisis, being able to focus on what you want to build. I mean, imagine that. Even if you could, instead of 80% or 90% of the time focusing on the crisis, what if you were able to make that 50-50? Even if you didn't stop focusing on crises, because of course sometimes that happens. But what if even 50% of the time you could focus on what you want to build? We're going to have a safe space for accountability and the opportunity. And we save the best bullet for last, is growing yourself as a leader through an easy to follow framework. It doesn't have to be a mystery. It doesn't have to be like, eating an elephant all at once or drinking from a fire hose, but really having the opportunity to know in an easy to follow pathway.
So I'd like to show people what we've been working on, this framework, because Lisa and I have really been pouring ourselves into this, and it may occur as overwhelming, which is why we're going to break it down to the very simple pieces here. But this is really what we're talking about, a success path to bring folks from where they're at through a growth framework, what we're calling a leadership development framework, where again, this stage zero and meeting people kind of where they're at right now, and how do you bring them to the next stage, just being ready for change. I think a lot of the folks that have joined us in here today have already benefited. They're starting to have some self-awareness and recognizing the need for change. They're maybe feeling a little bit of that sacrifice syndrome where they're putting their physical health ahead of, they're putting everyone else's health ahead of their own physical health. And how do we help people slow down to focus on their own health so that they could be healthy enough to help others, and taking people to the beyond the ready for change stage to owning it. How do you create yourself intentionally as a leader and the leader who you want to be? And then some of the most beautiful examples that we have when we're doing this training are when folks intentionally create themselves as a leader, not based on the past or the leadership they've stepped into, but on who they want to be. And it's just so inspiring to see folks get to that stage.
Yeah, and this really this represents our a lot of the work we were doing behind the scenes in terms of like where are people at, and we're thinking of leadership in terms of, you know, there's self leadership, right? Then there's leadership at the level of team and, you know, colleagues, and then there's organizational leadership. And so, you know, what we're going to reveal to you is our framework. We're going to kind of distill it down a little bit so it's kind of easier to grasp.
Right.
So as Robbie said, it's called the growth development framework, leadership development framework. You want to go to the next slide?
So like as a puzzle, right? If you're trying to put a piece of the puzzle, a 1,000-piece puzzle together, it feels almost impossible if you don't have what's on the front of the box. So we want to break this down into some very simple concepts. And we also want to show you, we wanted to show you what the front of that box looked like, but here we're going to break down piece by piece in this puzzle to show you this growth framework.
Yeah, and it's really helpful to see leadership as a spectrum, right? There's, you know, novice to mastery with everything. And and like a puzzle, you know, we're going to be putting these pieces together, but there's a lot of blending, you know, and a lot of overlap with some of these things. So it's not like, okay, you know, you're only in this category. It's more a little bit more fluid than that. But again, what we were interested in doing is creating an easy to follow pathway for anyone, no matter where you are, whether you see yourself more on the end of mastery, but you want to continue that, or whether you're new to being a leader, or even if you've been a leader a long time, but you're at a place where you feel like, you know what, I'm ready for a change. I'm ready to get to the next level. So we're just going to briefly go through each one of these just to kind of give you a sense of it. And then we'll talk about how you can become a founding member if you'd like.
Yeah, and if you would like to join, you can go to emsleadershipacademy.com/thrive. And there you'll have an opportunity to become a founding member. But again, as Lisa said, we want to talk about each piece of this and what it means to you.
Yeah. So, you know, our expression of what ground level is really you're doing the best you can with what you have. You know, it's not like doing anything wrong. You're trying, but it often feels like there's just too much. You know, you're pushing a rock uphill. You feel frustrated that despite your best efforts, you feel like you're alone. There's never enough time. You're producing results, but you know, it can be disappointing. Like you thought it was going to be easier than it was. You know, you're feeling that resistance from others. You know, there's a lot of superstitions that you might have, or unconscious ways of thinking that are in your way, and you don't even know what you don't know. And when you understand that leadership is something that you can learn, like anything, you know, it puts it into a different perspective. So this is what we're calling sort of the ground level, the G of our growth framework. And then the R stands for ready for a change. You know, you see that the way you've been doing it has produced what it's produced, but you see, hey, maybe there's another way. Maybe you have a little bit of hope that there's another way, that maybe you have some blind spots that, again, innocently are acting as barriers to producing what you're out to produce. To, you know, one of the things that's been most inspiring for me in years that we've been working with EMS leaders, and listen, I've worked with leaders from all different disciplines. My coaching has been with executives and business owners and leaders from all different industries. But one of the things that really speaks to me about the world of EMS is how much people care, and that people are committed to results, and they're committed to making a difference, to having people be the best they can be. And it's so frustrating when you've tried everything and it seems like nothing's going to make a difference. And in a world where EMS is struggling with recruitment and retention, um, one of the things may be that trying a different approach might reduce that. And certainly we've seen that in a lot of the organizations we've worked with, that burnout goes down. People really are able to contribute their best. And that starts with being ready for a change and starting to own your own role in whatever results that you're producing or that are being produced.
And again, Lisa, what I love about this framework that we've created, that we're in each stage, we're creating some milestones and actionable steps that you can take. So it's not just you should be doing it this way or you should think a different way. We're going to take some of what you learned today and the other experiences and activities. So you're going to be able to identify where you are on this spectrum and easily what are the next steps. That's why we're trying to, again, make this as simple as possible to follow. It may not be easy, right? It may be a challenge, which is a good thing.
But at least with those milestones and actionable strategies, you'll know, oh, this is something I can do. These are some things, and there'll be more than one, right? So that it won't be a one size fits all approach, but it will be different ways of moving to the next level. So then the O stage we call owning it, another word for taking responsibility. Like when you discover the power of choosing 100% responsibility, you will never go back. And we're going to talk about how do you do that, right? In the own it stage, you really are able to increase your impact and effectiveness because your leadership is not based on solely based on past experiences or things that you've inherited, but you'll be able to design who you are as a leader. Who do you want to be? What's the legacy you want to leave? What's the wake, like a wake of a boat, right? Like what's the wake you want to have as a leader? And in the own it phase, that's where you'll be able to truly design yourself as a leader rather than, oh, this is just who I am. You'll actually have an ability to do that more intentionally.
And again, this is one of my favorite stages when we watch folks go through this and they start to discover that it's, again, not their fault. It's the way that it was designed and they just stepped into it. And it wasn't an intentional design. It was more or less pieces that were just jammed together, expectations, responsibility shifted. And that's the organization they stepped into on that first day. And it progressed over time with very little intentional design. So when you start to have people become more aware of the kind of chaos that may be their organization, right? They're running the 3-ring circus and the circus tent is on fire. They're walking a tightrope between their blindfolded with daggers underneath, and they're getting crushed to death between their membership and their board or their upper leadership. And you start to see that people, they're trying to juggle these balls and all the balls are on the ground, right? They're drawing these really vivid pictures. And then we ask them the question, well, it's no wonder nobody wants to step up and take on a leadership role in your organization. People are saying, I can't find the right help, but that's the picture that's been painted for what leadership is. Yeah. Imagine if we get to intentionally design what we want leadership to be. And I love watching people's faces like, oh my gosh, of course. They invent themselves as maybe the captain of a smooth sailing ship in calm seas, or the conductor of an orchestra where everyone's doing their part. And that's what I think is just a beautiful kind of representation of how people get to that stage of like owning their leadership.
Yeah.
And then the next part is with others, right? We can't do this alone. We get to a stage where we've started to create ourselves as a leader. We've started to take on the responsibilities of our own leadership. And then we start to see where we're living those aha moments, right? Where others are becoming more self-aware in their organization. Maybe you're helping them go from that stage 0 to 1 yourself. And it's how can we together take on these new challenges and responsibilities versus how do I have to fix it all? How do you get to the stage of coaching versus telling? Or so you're coaching people to come up and create their own solutions instead of just telling them how it should be.
Yeah, and this is about developing others, being a leader, causing other leaders, and creating outcomes. Not just focusing on problems, but what do you want to create, and bringing other people on board with that.
And then this last stage here is what we're saying as kind of designing the thriving organization, right? Instead of just surviving, how do you get your organization to thrive, create that fully magnetic organization and atmosphere that draws people in? That EMS recruitment and retention is no longer is a natural byproduct of having a thriving organization where people feel confident, grounded, and centered. They're focused on their own. You're focused on your well-being, and others are focused on theirs. You see people as pure potential and ways of developing others. You see your team and team members and other people identify their own strengths instead of, and you leverage the strengths in all areas of your organization. So you start to develop confidence with your leadership team, right? You're focused on creating the ideal future, sustainability, stability. Urgent matters get handled in the moment and aren't distractors that just derail your organization or what you thought was important that day as you walk into the office.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's about thriving individually. It's thriving, having a team that thrives, and then again, having that sort of ripple effect to thriving, your organization thriving, right? So this is the phase of where, I mean, just imagine having an engaged, excited team that you're, creating with. I mean, that alone is so inspiring.
So this might be a good place to share examples, I think, of what people have gone through, Lisa.
Yeah, we wanted to share with you a couple of stories from people. In particular, there was a woman, we'll call her Sarah, who who attended a program of ours, and she shared with us that she was very excited to take on a leadership role. She saw that there was a lot of turmoil, and she felt that if she could be in a leadership role, she'd have a better chance of making a difference. So she took it on just gung-ho, and she actually started to hear that people were not happy with how she was approaching things, and she overheard people call her a dictator. Mm-hmm. And she was quite hurt and distraught, and very it was like somebody put a pin in her balloon. So when she came to us and was participating in our program, she saw some things about how she was trying to get her idea across to people, not asking people what they thought, not getting curious, but she again innocently felt like people would be excited to get on board with her ideas because, in her opinion, it was for everybody's well-being. But it wasn't coming across that way. So she started to see how she was communicating, how she was making people think that they were wrong, and that she thought her ideas were the best and their ideas, weren't important. Now, was that what she intended? Absolutely not. She had the best of intentions, but by waking up to her blind spot, she could see that there was a different way. And just to give an example, I mean, she went on to do many different things, but the first thing she did that we absolutely loved was she decided to, at their next meeting, full member meeting, to ask everybody to just write out on a slip of paper what they were most proud of in the organization. And before she did that, she actually declared, she got really public about why she took on the role and what she was hoping for, and that she wanted people's input. So she asked everybody again to just write on a slip of paper anonymously, what are you most proud of? And every single slip that came back, she read them out loud. And with the exception of one, which was negative, every other one, and I think she said there were about 30 people in attendance, were all very positive things. And she read them out loud. And she said every time she read one, she could see the room shifting. Everybody, yeah, that's a good thing. Yeah, that's a good thing. And just by spending the 10 or 15 minutes focusing on what worked, change the energy of the meeting. Now, obviously, we're not saying that that was it, and everything was ducky from that moment on. But what she was able to come back and share with us was that she never would have done that if she hadn't first seen that she had a blind spot,
Yeah.
and that she was inadvertently pushing a rock uphill, even though it was something that everybody else wanted. But because she wasn't asking and communicating it in ways that people felt that what their ideas were important too, it met with a lot of resistance. So that's one example. Another example we have here is a participant who did one of our online programs who reported that
everyone else changed.
and again, that's a function of the reticular activators, because you see what you're looking for. So when he started to look for strengths and started to look for what was working and started to look for people who were on board, suddenly he started to see differently. And then, another organization we worked with, they decided they were just going to develop their leadership. Then they provided programs for their current leaders and up and coming leaders. And within a very short time, under a year, they doubled their size in membership. They doubled the participation of the current members, and they increased their budget. And they even ended up with they didn't move, but they were able to redo their whole building, get funding for that. So again, that was a year-long investment in their leadership team. But because everybody got on board with communicating differently, owning their own role in the results, taking responsibility, and learning how to work together, it transformed the entire organization.
And that organization actually 10x'd their membership. They had 10 times the amount of fully participating members, which was really great to see, and doubled the budget and support from their municipality for their budget. And that new building won an award from the Historical Society, which I love when people hear, like, what new building renovation typically wins an award from the Historical Society. That's how bad the building was and what it looked like afterwards. So some of the other folks and results that we've seen and what people have been telling us is the ability to effectively train their team in communication. Draw the box and separate the facts out from opinion and learn to prevent prejudgment. How do you better understand the critical listening skills of what critical listening skills are? Maybe teamwork, and after that, they'll be setting goals to complete. Simply the way they talked with others. So this is what people are really getting out of these trainings that we've put together. Being able to listen to people that they couldn't tolerate before. Imagine that. That probably would be the worth of the price of the whole program. An overall attitude change. Giving long-time employees a new look. This one I really like. Asking them to fill out an exercise so that they can see what we are doing well that keeps them there. So somebody really focused on retention and the strengths of those long-term employees. Feeling more confident. Focusing on listening without biases. That's huge in both your professional and personal life. Better communication and listening strategies. Involving others, other leaders in the change process. Accepting people for who they are rather than your initial perceptions and what they are. Handling employee issues with a more poised response. Being able to work with employees and coworkers better. Cohesiveness of some of the fragments of between their team, right? Management seems to pay attention to us more as employees. So this is a great example of people who lead at every level and see that they can influence their leadership without their leadership necessarily having to do all the work on themselves. Here's a leader who was empowering certain individuals to take things off their plate, with the exception of regular check-ins, and knowing that recognition and appreciation will help propagate the cycle. So easy, and it doesn't cost a penny to recognize and appreciate someone. So those were just some of the tips that folks, what they've gotten out of our trainings and some of the testimonials we'd love to share. And Lisa, maybe if you could go through this and some of what you get as a Thrive Leadership Development member and some of the special bonuses we're putting into effect. And
Yeah, so we're going to be essentially providing content every month to move people. It's all designed to move people from wherever they are on that growth framework to the next level. And so there'll be content for wherever you're at, right? It's not like I said, we're not looking for a one size fits all approach. What we're looking for is to provide content that wherever you're at, you're gonna benefit from it. So you'll be part of the roadmap of the growth development framework, and you'll be given actionable steps. You'll have strategies that you can take, experiment with. You're going to have access to the global Thrive community because we are global, and we will have a special community platform where only our Thrive members will be have access to. We're going to be doing live sessions with experts every month discussing your most pressing challenges. We're going to be having what we're calling Thrive Live office hours. So at least once a month, we're going to have opportunities for you to bring your questions to the group. And we'll do live coaching. We'll do Q&A. We're going to have an opportunity to do small group. You'll be able to virtually be in small groups so you can have discussions with other leaders. You're going to have year-round support of your leadership development. It's going to be like having just a trusted group of people who you can go to. And then as a founding member, for people who invest now in their leadership development, you'll be locked in at this membership price, and there'll be no price increases. And that's only going to be for people who join between now and next Thursday when the cart closes. So we're also going to be providing some special bonuses. You're going to have access to our online communication program, which is called Bring New Life into Your EMS Organization. And you'll be getting exclusive member discounts to all of our future events and products. And we're putting more and more of our programs online. And then if you register before midnight Eastern time on Tuesday the 17th, Tuesday, I'm sorry, mixed up my days. Tuesday the 17th. We are offering for up to 30 people a one-on-one laser coaching session with either myself or Robbie or both of us, depending on when you schedule it. And that will be for you to just strictly get a session where we work on one issue that you're dealing with or one question that you have and helping you have a breakthrough in that. And then we have a 3-part training on recruitment and retention that we're going to give you for free as part of the becoming a founding member. And then one of our most popular programs, Influence Without Arm Twisting, which is a 60-minute audio on communication and how to influence others without manipulation and coercion, will also be included. So we were trying to make this like a no-brainer for people. Like, what? Like, are you kidding? We're getting all this for one low fee. But it's true. As a founding member, you'll get access to all that. If you join before the 17th, you'll get the fast action bonuses. But if you want to lock in the low founding member rate, then you have to join before next Thursday night at midnight Eastern.
Great. And again, folks, I think the one-on-one laser coaching sessions alone is super valuable. And we're going to do that give that to the first 30 people who register for the program. We want people to get a taste of what this is going to feel like. So you can join our Thrive Live office hours Tuesday, the 17th at 5 p.m. And if you go to emsleadershipacademy.com/save, you can join the Thrive Live office hours. You can register for those to get a taste of what's to come. We're going to have like some hot seat coaching. So if there's an opportunity, if you're dealing with this situation, to get coaching from Lisa and I. And really, it's a benefit to everyone who joins that, because if one person's dealing with that difficult situation, likely other people's are facing it, or they've faced it before in the past, or they're likely to face it in the future. So
Yeah, if you've been watching this for any length of time, you're probably at one of three places. Either you're, yes, I'm absolutely in, let me sign up, and you've already gone to emsleadershipacademy.com/thrive, and you're looking into it and you're figuring it out. And if that's where you are, welcome. We're excited. We already have a few members, so we're very excited to welcome some more founding members. And then, the other place you might be is, no, this isn't what you're ready for right now. And hopefully you've gotten some value out of today. But we invite you to stay tuned, because we're going to be delivering, more programs, putting more stuff online. So if Thrive isn't for you, that's okay. Not everyone is ready to take on, getting to the next level of leadership, or maybe it's not something that speaks to you. And then, a lot of times people are at, well, I think it's okay. I'm not sure if it's for me. I really want to, learn more. And that's exactly why we put the Thrive Live office hours available next Tuesday, is because you'll get to experience a piece of it firsthand. It's a real sample of what it will be like. And we really invite people to join us for that. So whether you're a yes or not, or even if you're a no and you want to know what the hell is this live coaching thing all about, we invite you to join us to just get a sense of what it's going to be like. So we thank you so much for joining us today. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add.
Again, if you're not sure and it's not right for you, next year we'll have an opportunity for folks to join this, but we're only going to really have this opportunity to join as a founding member over the next 6 days. And I feel like it's
a very low fee,
right?
Comparatively speaking. So we highly invite you to check us out and see if being a founding member, and one of the other things about being a founding member is you'll be able to help us shape and influence the content, because we'll be asking you, like, what is working, what do you want more of, so the founding members will really be able to
shape it
and influence it. So if that speaks to you, we highly recommend you join us.
And if you have any questions, feel free to comment in below. Send us a message through Facebook Messenger, or support at emsleadershipacademy.com, and we'll reply to you. So be on the lookout. Again, we're going to be sharing some other things about these special bonuses throughout the weekend, and we really encourage you to get that fast action bonus, especially with the laser coaching sessions. That should be very exciting. And thanks again for joining in. It's been a pleasure talking with you all, and we're really honored to be able to help support you, your leadership, your organization in the work that you're doing.
Thank you, everybody.